The Nomad was the special and sporty Chevrolet two-door sports station wagon with 1957 as its last and final build year in a 3-year run. Just 6,103 Nomad models were built for 1957, with a total 3-year model build run of 22,375 units. The Atlantis release of the sleek 1957 Nomad is loaded with details such as a small block Chevrolet V8, opening hood and doors, hinged rear tailgate, and rotating wheels. It comes with beautiful flame decals similar to the famous Hollingsworth Nomad. This Atlantis kit, part number H1260, is 1/25th scale and contains 169 parts. The parts are clean and laid out and ready for assembly. The kit offers 2 choices of small block Chevy engines to build. One is the 6-carbureted version, the other is the fuel-injected version. I chose the fuel-injected version. After preparing the body for paint, I used masking tape to align the doors. The hinge was placed onto the door, and the hinge retainer was put in next. There are alignment grooves for the retainer. Once I had the retainer properly aligned, I clamped it to hold it in place while I applied some liquid cement to secure the retainer. Take care not to get cement on the hinge itself. Taking these extra steps will ensure good door alignment, allowing the doors to open and close easily. Next, I used Tamiya's fine surface gray primer to prepare the parts for paint. As you can see, we have some minor imperfections in the hood. A little dust fell in the primer. We can wet sand that out with some 2000 grit paper and a little bit of water. Be sure to wet the surface first and light pressure, letting the sandpaper do the work. Going in one direction. Try to avoid edges so you don't burn through the primer. So all we're doing is taking out surface imperfections. You can dry the area and check your progress. Almost done. Now, if you do manage to burn through the primer, you will have to apply another coat. But that should be highly unlikely if you follow this procedure. And there you have it. Surface imperfections removed. Now we're ready for paint. Right now, I'm going to be mixing Pretix Wicked Colors. This is gold. We're also going to add in some 4050 gloss as a binder, and we're going to reduce it with their 4011 reducer. First, we're going to take our paint, make sure to shape it, mix it up really well, and we're going to put 5 milliliters into this cup. At least that's my goal. There we go. So that's 5 milliliters. Now, Createx recommends 30% of the gloss as a binder. This works out to about 1.5 milliliters. We're just going to add a little bit of that in. Kind of guesstimate your best bet. And then they recommend 10% of their reducer. But That's subject to how thick the paint is. Let's just add a little bit here. Bring it up to 7.5 milliliters. Now we'll stir. All right, you want to get it to the right consistency for your airbrush. I'm using a 3 millimeter needle at about 25 psi. My airbrush does not have a pressure gauge, but you can see that pours off pretty nicely. You want it to kind of run a little bit, but not. Now with Createx paints, they recommend you let them sit at least 10 minutes. So we'll let that sit for 10 minutes and then we'll apply it. I masked off the body and I applied 3 coats of the gold mixture with my Posh airbrush to the roof. The coverage looks excellent. We'll let that dry before moving on to the next step. I will mix the bronze body color in the same ratios that I mixed the gold roof color. After mixing the paint, I allowed it to sit for 15 minutes. During that time, I masked off the roof to protect it from overspray. I then applied 3 coats of the bronze color to the body. I also applied several coats to the bottom of the chassis to match the body. I think it turned out well. We'll let that sit and cure. I really like how well the paint went on. I applied the bronze to the rest of the body panels. The color combination looks amazing. Once the paint cured, I applied the custom decals made by Starfighter Decals. These mimic the custom flames on the Hollingsworth Nomad. I used microset and microsol to help with installation of the decals. For the clear coat, I used Createx 4053 High Gloss. I used their 4011 reducer to thin it for the airbrush by 25%. I used my Posh airbrush to apply the mixture to the body and all body parts. I painted the interior parts a combination of gold, flat black, and sky gray. I found a new flocking kit at Michael's on clearance. It has color tinted adhesive and flocking powder. First, you apply 1 coat of the adhesive and let dry for 1 hour. So after the first coat is dried, we apply the second coat. Now for the fun part. The instructions say to just take this and poof. Ooh, this looks nice and silky. All right, we'll let that dry for a little bit. Now we'll tap off the excess. Oh, that looks good. Excellent coverage. And then you just scoop all the leftovers and put it back in the bottle. Once the flocking is dried, we can start with the interior assembly. First, install the gas tank and spare tire assembly onto the bottom of the cargo floor. Next, we take the interior sides and attach it to the cargo floor, trapping the interior tailgate panel between them. Then we install the assembly onto the chassis frame. There's a notch on the spare tire assembly that rests onto the frame. The front suspension includes parts to either raise or lower the suspension. I used the spacers to lower my front suspension. Here I scrape the paint, and then I place the cross member and the springs into the frame. I place the steering knuckles and then the lower cross member to hold them in place. Next was the tie rod assembly. Those were held in place by little caps that go on the pins. Make sure to only glue the cap onto the very edge of the pin if you want the wheels to turn. And with that, the front suspension assembly is complete. I installed the dual mufflers and tailpipes, and I added a brass tips to the end of the exhaust pipes by using brass tubing cut to size. The rear suspension also came with lowering blocks. Those blocks go between the bottom of the differential and the top of the springs. I installed the rear drums, then I cleaned the contact points for the springs, placed the axle in through the differential, and attached the rear springs. Then I attached the rear suspension to the chassis. Last but not least, the shock absorbers. For the wheels, I used the chrome reversed rims and I applied the white wall decal to each of the tires. I cleaned the chrome contact points and attached them to each of the axles. Here we have all the wheels attached to the chassis. I installed Gopher racing wires onto the engine along with Detail Master wire looms to hold them in place. Then I placed the engine into the chassis. With the engine and drive shaft in place, I installed the exhaust pipes. You'll have to take off 1/8 inch off of the end of the exhaust pipe going to the engine if you use the headers. Now I can add the seats to the interior. I used bare metal foil for the trim on the body as well as the doors and the tailgate. The dash was detailed with semi-gloss black and gold paint with Gopher racing decals for the dash. I also used a Display chrome pen for the chrome accents. I drilled out the holes in the center spokes of the steering wheel and painted that gold. I also painted the rim of the steering wheel a semi-gloss black. I used canopy glue to install the front windshield and the dashboard. I also used the same glue to install the side windows. I used some mini magnets on the back part of the door as well as the inside where the door would latch. So that way the door will stay closed when the door is in place. Now I can place the inside of the door panel onto the door. Repeat these steps for the other side. Having the magnets in place hold the door in perfect alignment when closed. The body was installed onto the chassis. Let me tell you, this was no easy feat. As I tried to feed the chassis into the body, I kept running into interference. I ended up clipping pieces off of the firewall so that way I could get it past the inner fender wells. Another point of contention was this tailgate. Let me tell you, the instructions were not very clear on how to install the upper part, and the lower part didn't line up no matter what trick I pulled. I ended up sealing these in place. I managed to install the rear bumper as well as the license plate. The chrome in this kit left something to be desired. I managed to get the tail lights and the fins chromed and attached, but I was not happy with the placement nor how the chrome looked. I placed the rest of the underhood components. I installed the hood, the headlight bezels, the hood chrome trim, and the front bumper. Again, with this chrome trim, was very poor quality. It did not fit properly no matter how much I trimmed it, so this is the end result. And there you have it, the 1957 Chevrolet Nomad complete.